My acquaintance once had the opportunity to work as a preschool teacher in a daycare center in one of the small towns in the Tver region of Russia. The daycare center was housed in a building that was constructed many years ago, and it was located on the outskirts of town. In Soviet times, this area was home to a large defense plant and its workers' town. Now, all that remained were ruins and a few rundown buildings used for small businesses. The town itself had turned into a sort of ghetto, with a dozen two-story dilapidated residential houses and a rather unattractive private sector that gradually merged into the countryside. The actual town began just beyond an enormous wasteland overgrown with bushes and young pine trees. Nevertheless, the daycare center was fully operational, consistently enrolling children into its classes. Naturally, this required a staff of teachers and caretakers. My acquaintance worked as a preschool teacher there for a short period, but during her time, she became aware of an odd occurrence. From time to time, usually during nap time, the children would complain about the lady on the ceiling. It was not a daily occurrence, but rather sporadic, happening about once a week. The children talked about this fearsome lady with a strange insistence. The teacher's inquiries did not yield much information from the kids, as they would sob and talk about the scary lady. She also asked the long-serving nanny who had worked at the daycare for nearly 20 years, but she revealed that it was an old scare tactic passed down from the older children to the younger ones, and there was no more to it. However, this explanation did not satisfy my acquaintance. She had reservations about the nanny, both on subjective grounds and because she found it hard to believe that such young children would carry on a legend for years. The situation persisted. When she carefully approached parents and guardians, they shrugged it off, attributing it to the overly active child's imagination, blaming it on the poor living conditions in the area. Several times, she tried to stay with the children during nap time, but nothing unusual happened during her presence. Strangely, the nanny seemed agitated on such occasions and would try to get the teacher to leave the room. Then, one evening, she had to stay late because one child's parents were delayed in picking up their child. She sat with the girl in the playroom. The girl remembered she had left her favorite toy in the sleeping room and wanted to retrieve it. When they entered the room, the child froze in her tracks, whimpering in fear. The teacher asked what was wrong, and the child pointed to the corner near the ceiling. What she saw was hard to describe. It was neither a drawing nor a tangible object. It was something like an ethereal projection of a woman's head, with a face twisted in anger, like those distorted holographic images that remain unclear no matter how hard you look. The apparition gradually faded away, vanishing into the corner. Although it was a bizarre and eerie sight, the teacher was more fascinated than scared. She wondered about the culprit behind this intricate prank. She tried to question the nanny again, but this time the old woman behaved strangely, whispering something to the daycare headmistress about the teacher being unwell, and both of them began to press her, accusing her of professional incompetence. One day, the grandchild of one of the children arrived, and my acquaintance engaged the grandparent in conversation. She cautiously brought up the strange fears of the kids. The elderly lady clicked her tongue, shook her head, and recalled that many years ago, when the daycare center was newly built, a tragic event occurred. A young daycare teacher had died there. The cause of her death was either a terrible accident or a crime. The elderly lady explained that the mother of the deceased woman used to work at the defense plant, and she now worked at the daycare center. She suggested that the teacher visit the local church, where the priest could bless the building to alleviate the situation. My acquaintance intended to follow this advice, but had to leave the town abruptly. Just a week after her departure, she learned that the daycare center had burned down in a fire. The fire, which happened late in the evening, had firefighters arrive too late to save the building. The cause of the fire was determined surprisingly quickly. It was due to the negligence of the nanny, who was later found dead in the charred ruins.